Welcome to this meeting in London of 500 trade unionists, academics, and general Latin American enthusiasts. I know all of us are so glad to hear from you talking about this area that you know so well. Do you want to just greet them?
Yes, I wish I could be with you in person. Sorry, this is the best I can manage.
Never mind, your voice is with us, and that's fine. US. So can we just see the Trump administration's policies of threats and bullying towards the region's progressive groups? How do you see that playing out, notably towards Mexico, where the pressures have put on the government the Mexican government to take responsibility for all the refugees seems the most extraordinary heavy-handed behavior.
The U.S. is rather like Europe, is trying to force people fleeing for their lives away from U.S. borders. It's particularly grotesque in the U.S. case because not only because the United States is a rich, extremely privileged country with extraordinary advantages no other country has, plenty of empty space, not a dense population, could easily absorb many refugees. Furthermore, these are refugees fleeing from U.S. crimes. The United States, I don't have to go through this, but there's a long, horrible record which peaked in the 1980s with Ronald Reagan's violent terrorist wars in Central America, virtually destroyed the countries, left a horrendous legacy. People are still fleeing from it for a period. The plurality of refugees was actually coming from Honduras, where the Obama administration supported a military coup in 2009 that overthrew a mildly progressive government, turning Honduras into a even far worse bar chamber than it had been. It was virtually the murder capital of the world. So yes, people are fleeing. When they come to the border, they're treated horribly. I happen to live in Tucson, not too far from the border. People are dying in the desert, trying to escape the border guards. Now the policy is to keep them away from the border altogether by coercing Mexico into banning them at its borders with Guatemala, and or insisting that if they come to Mexico, which of course they have to get to the United States, they have to ask for asylum there and cannot ask for it in the United States. All of it, I don't think, go through it, but the record in Europe is similar and even worse. These are really shocking developments. Right now, where I live, in fact, there are federal cases in the federal courts against with felony charges against solidarity workers who are leaving, going into the desert to leave bottles of water for people who are dying of starvation and thirst in the very harsh desert conditions. And fortunately, there are courageous activist solidarity movements, but it's nowhere near enough to put an end to this obscenity. Mexico's in a very difficult position. I'm sure you've heard the famous statement that Mexico's problem is that it's too far from God and too close to the United States. In fact, where I happen to be sitting right now was stolen from Mexico in a war of aggression in the 19th century.
It's very good to have that historical reminder of how long these crimes have gone on in one shape or another. Can I just ask you to turn now to your assessment of the continent's trends today with the national revolt, including so many middle-class demonstrators in places like Chile against the pain of what neoliberalism has brought? How do you assess, when you look at the continent, how do you feel about the balance of forces today?
We should bear in mind that it's not just the Western Hemisphere. The whole world is seeing uprisings of all kinds, many you take a look at each country, each area, it's got its own reasons, but there's an underlying constant element. That is the impact of the neoliberal assault on the general population in Europe, the United States, much of the global South, for the past generation. In Chile, the slogan, which I'm sure you've heard of the demonstrators, is it's not about 30 pesos, it's about 30 years, namely the fact that the horrible legacy of the vicious Pinochet regime, the first major exercise in neoliberalism, that legacy has substantially remained. And though Chile's economy is kind of functioning, there's extraordinary inequality, a huge poverty in the midst of plenty of affluence. The effects of the Pinochet pension, school programs, and so on are extremely harsh, and the population's uprising to overthrow them.
Noam, can I interrupt you to squeeze in one more question? I wanted you to say something about how you see the climate emergency, in particular in Latin America, and looking at the Bolsonaro-Trump attitudes to business and the absolute crisis it's brought about in the Amazon. Could you say something about that?
Well, there was a recent article in one of the leading US journals by a Bulletin of Atomic Scientists by one of the lead authors of the IPCC report, Rand Pierre Humbert, which opens by saying, let's not mince words. It's time to panic now. And he's right. We have a very short period in which it's possible still to prevent an overwhelming environmental catastrophe, which will in fact terminate organized human life in any form that is recognizable. Now, at the point of this crisis, the most powerful country in world history, the United States, is racing to try to exacerbate the crisis, to drive us off the edge. They know exactly what they're doing, but short-term profit is so significant that it doesn't matter if we destroy the possibility of life for our grandchildren. It's really capitalism going insane. It's happening, the same thing's happening with the energy corporations, with the big banks and so on. Now, Brazil, under Bolsonaro, happens to have joined the United States in climate, in global warming denial, and moving to exacerbate the crisis. The rate of fires in the Amazon, if not sponsored, at least tolerated by the government, is increasing rapidly. There simply are no words to describe the fact that in the kind of situation we're in, we have leadership groups in most powerful state in the world, the most powerful country in Latin America, racing to the cliff as fast as they can go. And the background is just, if you take a look at the background, it's just shocking. They know exactly what they're doing. You take the Republican Party in the United States, which is the most dangerous organization in the world right now for this specific reason alone. Up until about a decade ago, they were trying to beginning to deal with global warming issues. John McCain ran for president in 2008 with mild global warming policies. What happened is that one of the major private energy corporations, Koch brothers, began a massive campaign of buying senators, intimidating them, developing huge lobbying campaign, massive juggernaut, fake popular movements to knock on doors. They succumbed. The party switched positions. Now, global warming is a four-letter word. You can't mention it. That's led to a situation in which we may literally destroy ourselves unless sharp changes are taking place. And what's happening in Brazil is a shocking example of this. The role of the United States is, if we're honest, the worst crime in history. Even Hitler didn't aim at destroying all of human civilization. Trump is doing that, and his party's behind him. And there's very little discussion of it.
No, I have to thank you so much for reminding us of how important it is to see these crimes and the wonderful way you lay it all out. I wish you were here. We all wish you were here today. But thank you anyway very, very much for your time and your wonderful inspiration and lucidity. All the very best to you. Goodbye.
Thank you very much.